All right, well, welcome everyone to the Winter Twilight Grow Roundtable, 21st of February. And this is greens washing. We're gonna jump right into the wash pack and look at greens specifically and look at some things, workarounds that people can't live without or things that have worked really well. And the workaround, again, is some people have asked about that. I don't really know what that means. And I guess it really is, I should say, anything at all, tools, equipment, processes that solve the problem or helps them work a lot better. So that's the definition I'd like to use. And this is a pretty simple, informal sharing discussion. So we're going to go over a little bit of intro, some logistics, and most of the time is sharing and discussion, and we'll see what comes up. A lot of interesting things I've got some slides and photos of a lot of stuff too that Andy and I have run into over the last few years that have really stuck out that people rave about. But we also love to hear everything that you guys bring to this whole conversation and discuss stuff. We'll do a little eval and follow-up logistics at the end, last few minutes. So Andy or someone else, maybe even Lori, could be timekeeper and trigger the whole thing when we're done. And just to back up, this is, Scrub is this 3-year project, sanitation and cleaning resources for your business. Of course, that name, really, we chose it because of the acronym Scrub, which is works very well. And this is a multi-state team. We've got from UVM, Vern, and myself, Chris, and Andy. Billy Mitchell's down in Georgia. And then we have Lori, who's here now, and Robert from Cornell over in Western New York, and Phil Toko in Michigan State. So again, we're at this for about 3 years. We're really developing hybrid resources based on needs of growers. And the way this has evolved is that we've really, this is it. These hearing directly from folks about what your issues have been and then working with those, coming up with educational kind of workshops, which have tended to be more small group one-on-one or just a few people working over time. I think Karen might be here and, has worked with us early on. And then we've kind of developed resources out of those small meetings and really promoting and distribute those all over the place, hoping to reach about 375 growers over 3 years. Okay. So we're going to do a little intro here. Well, before that, let's just, there's a lot. This is such a complicated topic. I mean, it probably more than almost anything. I mean, in the wash pack, certainly. But, greens in particular are tricky. So I just, made a list of some of the moving parts we might get into. Bins, right? Harvest pack out, bin landing, conveyance, dryings, tables of all sorts, shelving of all sorts, hoses, nozzles, lighting, dunk tanks, drainage, transfer nets and paddles, fumes, bubblers, sanitizer, spinning, drying, condensation, spring tables, fans, single-use bags or boxes, cooling, cold storage, and that's not all. We can also look at systems and support, including, the flow of how you set things up, cleaning routines, SOPs, your cleaning materials, worker communication, worker training, roles, responsibility, quality control, care, comfort, clothes, heat, music, hand washing, ice cream breaks, etc. Wasted time and space, sort of lean approach to things. Do you even wash stuff or not? Could you work with markets, labeling, traceability, juggling multi-crop stuff, pest prevention, all of that. So I just wanted to sort of emphasize how complicated this can be. A little bit, we're going to do a little intro here. I'm going to unshare in a minute, and if you can turn on your video if it's possible, that's great. So we're actually all in the same room looking at each other. And let's just start by going around, keep muted if you're not talking. That's ideal, just for noise. Use the chat box. But yeah, let's go around. Who's here? What's your name? Where you're from? And describe your greens wash pack setup if you have one. If not, then just say, why you're here, and describe something in that that's worked well. So if you can think of some part of it that works well and something that doesn't, or maybe did not work well that you've solved. And just take a minute or two each. And we'll start with that, and then we'll kind of jump into what rises to the top. And I think I introduced myself, but I'm Hans Estrin. I know some of you guys, not everyone. And I do actually have a small greens farm, shoulder season greens, called All One Farm. There's one picture of it in here, so I can contribute a little bit actually as a grower from the few years I've been at it and worked on farms washing greens as well. So I have some experience there, as well as being UVM extension um, educator. Why don't we go to Jason, who's next there that I see, and Andrea, sorry.
Hi, Andrea and Jason. We have a small 1 acre mixed vegetable farm. We're washing, last year we were washing under 10 by 10 pop-up tents with three dunk tanks, and we use sanitizer and the Sanidate in the first dunk tank. And we use shade cloths to protect the greens from sun and wind. And we set up they had a little spinner to spin our greens, a little hand spinner, 5-gallon hand spinner to spin them dry, and then we would dump them into into some crates, and then we would bag them up. And there you go. Yeah, we used like 6-foot Rubbermaid tables to like set up our drying and our packing station. It was kind of like a U-shaped station basically, and we had all of our other supplies on another table. And the downside to that was that we had to put up and break down that wash pack station every time, because you can't leave those tents out and the elements, they just break. We did lose one last year because we got a little bit lackadaisical on taking it down. Or actually, I think we had a windstorm. Anyway, but it was, I think overall, though, the quality of our greens was pretty good, and we were able to get them out of the field quickly, get them cooled down quickly, get them into the cooler fairly quickly, too. And yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of great compliments about the greens with that setup, as simple as it was. But I think an ideally a more permanent setup would be better going into the future. Not having to break down tents all the time would be great.
Great. Yeah, that sounds pretty inefficient right
Yeah.
there. Julie?
Sure. Julie of Cambridge Corner Farm in Cambridge, New York, just pretty close to Bennington. We do a fair amount of greens. We got like a triple wash, 3-bay system in a stainless steel sinks that I got out of a place that was closing. That's the great part of our wash area, and then a whole lot of stainless sorting that goes with it. The bad part is we moved our farm 3 years ago, and we're kind of under a temporary wash station with landscape fabric. So we're kind of slowly sinking into the ground till we can finish renovating the barn to move our wash pack inside. But it's working for right now. We throw shade cloth over it in the summertime so it doesn't get too hot under there. So it works well as long as we're washing early in the day till we manage to finish our barn renovations.
That's great. Thanks, Julie. And Julie, also like Guy, it's starting to see many wash pack photos and SOPs in the CAPS program that she's doing a lot of work with, that we administer. Many of you know it. Some of you don't. But it's a produce safety plan builder and certification program. Okay, Carrie, I think, Bernard, you're there. Frozen.
Hi.
Can you
hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? I have very bad internet. I'm in Shusha, New York. very close to Julie. I have a small vegetable farm, 2 acres. Also a makeshift wash station. I use a old milk tank, stainless milk tank for dunking, and a 3-bay sink. And then I have a salad ace spinner, all of which is working and could be more efficient, but it works for now. I have a bubbler, and I find it's like too aggressive for the greens. So pull out and don't use it right now. It's sitting to the side, and that's it.
Great. Yeah, we'll definitely spend a little time chatting about bubblers and maybe how to modify them so that they can, be more or less aggressive. Thanks, Carrie. Liz?
Hi, sorry, I'm not as familiar with Teams. My operation is very, very small. I'm in Baltimore City. We're on less than 1/3 of an acre between our 3 sites. I set up a multi-bin system with just like the super small 15-gallon stock tanks every time I'm trying to wash my greens. I have, it's like a little deck built out of the like permanent deck boards. So it's not wood, it's plastic, so I can actually wipe that off and use Sanidate with that. But I don't have shade really in my system. So it really requires me to do everything quickly in the morning, and then I truck it over to our other facility that has electricity, and I throw it in our residential fridge. We are building out our barn this year, and I'm going to actually build a real walk-in cooler. Yay, yay, yay. But I'm looking to scale up our operation in ways that are going to be better for all of our neighbors who we distribute our food to, and better for our staff. Thank
Great.
you.
Sounds like you're going to be busy. Who's next? Oh, everyone changed around. That's always hard. Paul. Yeah.
Paul Feenan here. 2 hats today. Literally wearing a high mowing hat. I'm the regional sales rep, so I help people with seeds, and in particular, talk a lot with folks about greens and lettuce, and so it's just here to soak up some information about what people are doing, so I can share it with others. But also, I recently moved from Vermont to Trumansburg, New York, and I'm setting up a 2-acre trial market garden to really just grow out varieties, but also, focus on some other demonstration type activities, but mostly variety trials.
Great. Thanks, Paul. And you have a fairly long farming history too, I know, in various places. So I'm sure you'll be able to contribute in many ways. Lori.
Hi, folks. I'm a technician with the Cornell Vegetable Program. I work mostly with farms in Rochester, New York, and Buffalo, and learning the ropes. Started the job this year, and really here to learn from everyone. So, thanks.
Thanks, Lori. Lori's on our team, our scrub team. Andy.
Good evening. I'm Andy Chamberlain from UVM Extension, Ag Engineering, and I'm also on the scrub team here. So I'm part of this call today. I don't have a farm that does greens, so I'm happy about that. And I'm in Underhill, which is not too far outside of Burlington.
Thanks, Andy. And I might mess up your name, Guradala Daya.
Hey, my name's Guru. I have a small market garden in southwestern Ontario, Canada. It's about 1/3 of an acre to a 1/2 acre. It just got started last year. And I have basically just like an outside poured area of just gravel. And I have some tanks set up on top of that. It's totally off grid, so I'm like, don't have any shade. I have like a salad spinner, 5-gallon, and a couple tanks and a couple hoses and a lot of room for improvement.
So besides the no shade, there's a laundry list of things that
Yeah, a
maybe you'd
laundry
like to
list
see
of
better.
different things.
All
And then
right,
I also grew in the winter, so in the winter I'm processing everything inside the main kitchen
Mhm.
house.
Yep. So I'm sure, Guri, you'll take something from this, as many people probably will. And also, just so you know, I'm going to throw this out right now, and everyone, that we're more than happy to follow up with anyone. So you might see something that's like, that's a great idea, but I can't afford it, or something like that. And there are a lot of different ways to come at this. So latch on to the good idea, something you want to do. If you don't feel like you have the means to do it or whatever, just reach out to us and we can probably figure out either a slightly different solution or something that's very cost effective. Okay, Lindsay.
Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay Gilmore. I'm in Philadelphia. I'm mostly a produce safety educator, but I also help farms with wholesale readiness. It kind of goes together. So I'm here to listen and learn and look. I have seen a lot of different greens operations over the years, from the tub on the table to the pretty big organic greens, just, I don't even know what to call it, processing line. But I mostly work with small farms who are trying to figure this out on a low budget. So I'm curious to hear what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm from Grand Haven, Michigan, which is the west side, west central area of the state. So I'm representing Michigan with Phil here. And I'm a produce safety technician. So you mentioned earlier, like a produce safety certificate program. That's kind of the role of the technician here, as well as technical assistance and then the on-farm education and whatnot. So I'm kind of here today to learn about what's going on and what are some different ideas that I can relate back to the growers.
Great, Morgan. Welcome from Michigan. Elizabeth?
Hello. Oops, can you hear me?
We can hear you. And if you
Okay,
do,
good.
if you have video, use it. If not, oh, there you are. Look at that.
Oh, okay,
Awesome.
good. I can't see myself, so I hope that it all works out. Yeah, I'm Elizabeth Wood from New Leaf CSA in Dummerston, Vermont. I have a cute little wash station that we got through a produce safety improvement grant, which Hans was very involved with, and it's been great. We've got a dunk tank, like a two-bay stainless steel sink, and there's also now a washing machine spinner. I guess I joined this workshop because Hans said these are workarounds you can't live without, and I figured if I can't live without it, I'd better see it. So I guess yeah, that, and I mean, I am definitely interested in the bubbler question, whether or not to get a bubbler. Most of the time, I'm happy with how clean things get, but sometimes we get some salanova or some spinach that's a little dirty, coming out a little dirty. So there's definitely room for improvement there. Let's see, I do some winter greens, which I kind of take home and wash in my kitchen sink and do a hand spinner with that. I don't know if I'm ever going to go to the stage of winterizing my wash station, but that's a possibility to think about down the road. So anyway, that's about it, I think.
That's great. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Karen?
Hi there. I haven't used this in quite a while. I have no idea. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good.
We can hear you and see you.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm down in southwestern Vermont, and we have a little 3-acre diversified vegetable farm. And we have a pretty basic wash setup with we use a 3-sink system for washing our greens, and a converted washing machine for our spinner. And we feel like we have really good success with that, and a nice dry product, and feel pretty good about that. But we too, like Elizabeth and some others, have looked at that question of bubblers. We were really hot to trot in doing a bubbler a few years ago, and then we had a season where we just didn't do as many mixed greens, just because of labor issues, really. So we didn't do a bubbler, and now we're thinking about it again. And we also find ourselves often thinking about transfer nets or paddles, in part because we're aging and we have more, I think, repetitive stress problems as we think about how we move things along the line. So I'm curious what people are doing on that front and finding success in. We had a funny moment last month. We were on vacation and in Chinatown in Honolulu and saw like, oh, there's like the perfect thing to move the greens from one bin to the other, but it wouldn't fit in a suitcase. And of course, we haven't looked for that since. But anyway, I'm just always curious about how people are moving the product down the line. So
what was the thing in Honolulu?
Oh, it was just, you know, some kind of larger wire mesh handled thing, but that was lighter and maybe had a little wood in it too. But it was, you know, it just looked a little sturdier than things we've used. And we do currently actually use that method, a method where we use kind of a handheld paddle device, draining device, because we like to practice quality control along all stages of that. And we feel like, you know, we find things we want to remove by moving things in smaller batches from bin to bin. So, but this is just like a nicer, lighter, wider surface version of that. Anyway, so that's just always on our mind, how to get the product down the line.
That's great. But you know, I bet Andy will come up with some amazing thing by the end of this meeting.
Yay.
No one will be able to live without. Okay, let's see. Connor. Yep. Hi, Connor.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I was having some network issues.
All right.
So yeah, our greens setup is pretty basic. Just using a 3-bay sink, and then we got an old
We've lost you, Connor. Let's move on, and if you come back, Connor, we'll circle back to you. Okay, Hannah. Or Hannah.
Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, my name's Hannah. I'm a new farm owner in Buckland, Massachusetts, and I'm working, actually joining a business with someone that already has existing farm. It's about 3 acres, and we're working on building a new wash house structure. And yeah, I'm here to get ideas on setups and see what people are using, and yeah, go from there.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. Okay, let's see. Karen, Carrie, Lindsay, Lisa. Hi. Lisa McDougall's here. I didn't even know that. Looks like.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Can.
Okay. My name is Lisa. I'm in Shaftesbury, Vermont. Our green setup is pretty simple. We use a 3-basin sink that I got forever ago, stainless steel from a bakery. We use 2 salad spinners, the Salad Aces, which are 20 gallons each. And we use a sanitizer in our 3rd dunk for the greens. That's like working pretty well. We do a fair amount. We do about anywhere from 150 to 225 pounds of greens per week. And our system is like small for what we do, but it works well. And like speaking to what Karen mentioned about having it in small batches, not having super large sinks, you can really have good quality control with that. I'm always curious what people are using for salad spinning. Sometimes I think about getting a larger spinner, but the 2 20 gallons work pretty well. And also sometimes curious about a bubbler, but our mix comes out pretty clean. And I try to keep it pretty low tech. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's a cool approach, that fairly high volume but low tech, lots of batches, good quality control. Thanks, Lisa. And who else? Liz? Did we get you yet? I don't think so. Liz Lamb?
Oh, I already went.
Oh, sorry. I'm like everything's changed around here. So let pipe up if Paula, is that Paula hasn't gone, right?
Yeah, I haven't gone.
Okay.
I'll turn on I think my camera should be on.
It's
But
on.
here I am.
You're good.
So Paula Doherty from Uphill Farm in Rochester, Vermont, and real excited to have a greens harvester this year for the first time. And we have basically the basic 3-tub wash. We have it outside. We put everything on a plastic screen. How big is our spinner? 20. 5 gallon or 7 gallon spinner. We have a couple of those, and we move the greens into our house to dry with a fan. This is my biggest question, is the process between the spinning, drying, and putting it into a bag. Like, how do I know? I know some people say they don't even dry it after they spin it. We spin it, or we dry it with a fan, and just kind of guesstimate when to bag it up, and kind of curious to know what best practices are for everybody else in that regard.
So you're not spinning, you said. You're just
No,
with
we
the
do
fan?
spin.
Oh, you
We
do
definitely spin. We use it's the big 5 gallon
spin.
spinner, and then we put it out on the table to dry with a fan on it. And at that point, we're sort of guessing that it's time to bag.
So condensation is an issue. You're not getting them greens dry enough all the time.
Well, I feel like
we are.
What?
We're getting them dry.
Yeah, we're getting them dry.
Yeah.
Just wondering if the way that we're doing it is the best practice.
Yep.
Or if there's a way to gauge when to start bagging.
Okay. That's great. Thank you, Paula.
You're welcome.
Who have I missed? Anyone? Wait, Morgan? Morgan? Morgan already went. Okay. All right. I think that is good. Okay, so this is a pretty big group, which is great. A lot of folks are here to listen, and we have some. Oh wait, is Ryan here? I can't remember. I thought he was. I saw him earlier. Nope, he left. Okay, so we have a lot of folks who are here to listen, and others who have had quite a bit of experience with washing greens, and trial and error, running into stuff that just doesn't work. And what I would like to have happen during this time is that not everyone's going to end up sharing, obviously, but we have if you think of your time in the wash pack when you run into these pinch points, or things sort of all hell breaks loose, or something didn't work and you were figuring out how to fix the problem, and you've stumbled into something, I'd love some of this stuff to come out where you made an improvement that really was great, and then that has really helped you. So that is something I really hope we get some energy around. And then also these conundrums, the things that people brought up. No shade. What are we going to do? Like workshop that, the floor and drainage sinking into the ground, temporary wash pack. Is there ways to suggestions for how to make some incremental improvement if you're not going to build something right away, or maybe you are going to build something? hoses are, I think there's one person that said that, greens that are a bit dirty, ways to get a little bit more cleaning, but without breaking the greens down. And I know that that is definitely an issue where, the durability, and if you put through another wash every time you do that and then spin them, you're really causing wear and tear. So ideas around that. And then bubblers, let's definitely talk a little bit about bubblers and how to control them. And Andy has a lot of good info on that. So I definitely want to spend a little time there. And larger spinners, I don't have a lot of information on that, but we can definitely hook up afterwards. And I know that, if that's a concern, all these things, if you don't get what you're after in this conversation, definitely circle back with us because we can help. This is like you start this off. We'll be there and really try to support you as best we can. Okay, so maybe what I would do is, because photos are always fun, I would do a really quick slideshow of some things just that I have seen. I'm not going to talk much, but just so you can see, these are the things that have risen to the surface for me over the last visiting tons of farms when I hear growers say, wow, this is a great thing, or you got to use this, or we won't spend much time, but I would maybe start with that, and then let's jump into the issues that some people are having, get some advice, and have discussion around some of these really awesome things as well that people have come up with. Okay, so let's see, we got a chat here. What's going on? Yeah, and Andy is posting some, there's a ton of resources that Andy will be posting stuff as we're talking. So definitely look in the chat as well. And I will pick on people as we're going through this. I'm not going to spend a ton of time with this slideshow, but just a few things. So a lot of people have talked about flow, and really, really important to think about flow. So I just put this in here. It's probably one of the more important things, how to reduce the number of steps somehow in anything you do, U-shaped or throughput. Also separating dirty from clean, keeping bins, harvest containers on the outside, as opposed to bringing them all the way, the dirty harvest containers in to your pack out space. This, one of my favorite things, this is my little setup here where I do like 20 pounds of greens at a time or so, are these little bread trays that you see. They're 15 bucks a piece. I got like 4 of them. They're like the best things I've ever gotten just for the kind of greens I'm doing, and I can put fans on them as well. But they've been a super nice space that's mobile as well. And of course, those are pickle containers, and the setup and flow is really important. And that's worked well. Hoses and nozzles, so the quick connects, some of these hand-free sprayers, and this one, I don't know how many people have one of these spray down guns, but they're super expensive, probably 80, 90 bucks. But boy, every grower I've talked to that's had them, I don't think anyone has regretted it. Is there anyone out there who has one of these that regrets getting them, or has anything to say of, is it worth the investment for a good sprayer?
Those sprayers are great.
Worth the money, you think?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
I love it too.
Okay, we got a few of them. That's good. Yeah, I've never heard anyone say otherwise, so I just want to highlight that. Hanging up hoses really important. Even if you're hanging these, and again, these are things people have really over the years. Even if it's really cheap thing like this is Lewis Creek Farm in the middle of just running a poly tube and short hoses that you can actually manage that are overhead. Really important. Hose manifolds. That's a do-it-yourself one there, but those can be really great too with a quarter turn as opposed to a full turn. So all these little things add up, saving time, saving 5 seconds here, 5 seconds there. Not tripping over the hose, and it's a cleaner stuff. So definitely work on that management, really key. If you use sanitizer, having a really good system to quickly calculate the dose, and then once you get this dose down, you make a label, have a way to dispense it really quickly and safely, really key. So follow up with us if you want. We can help set you up with both labels and all of that stuff for using sanitizer. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. This is Footprint Farm, and the shelving, like it's just inexpensive shelving that to make things always convenient. Where do you want to put something while you're working? If your hand goes somewhere and you're like, boy, I wish something was there, you can figure out some way to make it work. A lot of people are using dunk tanks on this call, and that's great, fine. A lot of people, it's an efficient way to go. The fishing nets, I've had a lot of not great comments about all the time, and I think that gets to, Karen, what you were talking about, just having something that's sturdy, a little bit shallower, so you're not spending time like trying to empty the thing out. Look in the background too, these like kits, so that scale behind Jake there, who's at Footprint Farm, is on wheels, and it's a little wheelie trolley, and those kinds of things are just amazing. I mean, people set up these kits and especially on wheels, and they're ready to go, and really worth investing time in that kind of thing. These are all sort of can't live without things I've run into. I worked at Old Athens Farm for quite a while, and this is a workaround. Boy, super efficient system, which was either 2 or 3 dunks, just with these solid crates in a big trough, and switching them and being able to drain them really easily was super efficient and went really fast. Anyone been to Lewis Creek Farm? But if you're worried about damaging like big spinach in the greenhouse or something that it doesn't gonna hold up very well. These are pig feeding troughs, and this is a great workaround. They're on concrete. It's up at the right level, and Hank uses a couple of these, uses a sanitizer in them, and basically works spinach down really carefully from one side to the other. And pulls it out of the other side. So it's like a 10-foot long, shallow trough. And so it's very gentle, and it gets the stuff really clean. Elizabeth, this might be something that is of interest. I have no idea. Not too expensive. These things are, pretty typical in the ag world. Stabilizing stuff. Well, so spinners, will not talk a lot about these kinds of spinners, but I definitely want to point out this stabilizing. If you don't have a spinner stabilizer, it's so well worth. I used one without it and then with it, and it just blew me away, the difference. But just cutting a hole in a piece of plywood and figuring out a way to screw it down. This is at Foggy Meadow Farm. And that picture is from Andy's workshop, I believe, with the new Speed Queen, which is a really great system with these baskets. How many people on this call? I'm just curious. Maybe put in the chat if you've got a spinner like this, a converted washing machine.
Hans, you were close. That's my basement workshop, and then that's actually a cheap hot point. But that's minor details.
That is minor detail. It's actually probably a major detail. What's the price difference between that and the Speed Queen?
Almost $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah, but there definitely some benefits. So we can spend a little time talking about that if anyone's interested. We've talked a lot about this, but people put things on wheels, and anything, conveyance, drop places, even these little carts, really important for just saving these little few seconds here and there. And of course, you need something to roll it on. Back spray is an issue, and this is one little thing that at Full Plate, they were raving about like, oh my God, I just took this piece of sheet of flashing and put it on the back and screwed it into the back of my dunk tank, and it made a huge difference. So, you know, a little thing like that costs nothing, and of course it's not as cleanable, but it's easy to take off and clean. Okay, so bubblers, maybe we could stop for a second and just chat about controlling, cleaning and modifying bubblers. This is probably not a bad place to do it, and we can hop back in. This is Pleasant Valley Farm. I think it's like a 200 and something gallon tank, big stainless tank that they got. Pretty good setup, I think, and they can take the thing apart and clean it out. So I would love to, let's just spend, it seems like there's 3 or 4 people here that are interested in bubblers, and I would love to hear from anyone about managing the intensity of the bubbler, both in terms of the air input and then also maybe the air output, what people have done, and if there are ideas. And Andy, of course, feel free to jump in because I know you worked with this as well quite a bit. I'm going to pause for a minute there and let's wrap about that.
I guess this question is mostly for Andy, but if anybody wants to jump in, I've noticed you're using like the dimmer switch to slow the bubbler down on one of the bubbler videos. And I was curious if that's good, or does that wear out quickly? And would you use like a Hertz controller, motor controller, so that, you know, you control it with Hertz as opposed to adding or subtracting resistance? And have you seen anybody that's done that with you know, a variable speed controller for a motor? That's it.
I don't think it will be any issue for longevity. I haven't tested that, but that was Chris's recommendation, and he would know more about the mechanics working of that, and thinks that that's a good idea. I actually wired up 2 switches. If you probably picked up in the video, one was a power on off, and then I also did a dimmer switch in line with that. That way I could leave the dimmer at its set point and just flip the switch on and off. And I wasn't always trying to fine tune that spot.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, thanks.
So with bubblers, right, I guess the you know, the blower is one thing in terms of intensity, and then the output, number of density of holes and the diameter of holes. Andy, would you want to say maybe something about the most recent iteration with that video you did and kind of what you learned about hole density? I know you talked about that some.
Yeah, I don't want to steal the show from farmers sharing their experiences, but the first link I posted in the chat, or you can visit go.uvm.edu/bubblers, will take you to the blog post where I kind of summarize some of our findings as far as what works well, what doesn't. Some of those would be using a PVC pipe filled with sand as weights to hold down the apparatus, so you're not drilling holes or mounting anything in the bottom of your stock tank. Let's see, hole density, the smaller the hole, the smaller the bubble, but it kind of doesn't matter so much. What does matter is how aggressive the agitation is, which is why we recommend using a dimmer switch so you can slow it down if need be, because some greens are more tender than others. Glancing at my blog posts, we also added the addition of cam lock fittings to what we call the PVC manifold on the bottom, which allows you to take it apart and easily, 1, drain it between uses, and 2, dry it if need be, or as needed to dry it out regularly to help keep it clean.
Other folks, Carrie, it looked like your hand went up, but that might have been an accident because it's down. I'm not really sure. Did you have something?
I did. I'm wondering if anyone is seeing the chat box, because I'm not seeing any chat box.
Do you see a bar on the top that has icons? share my
Yeah,
screen.
yeah, I have the bar, but I don't see a chat. So
That's
I didn't know
weird.
if it was me or
Yeah, left to
Probably.
right, there's icons, and then the one with the like cartoon bubble thing in there. If you have to hit that, and every time you hit it, it toggles the chat on and off. That's how it works on my screen.
Yeah. Oops, that's
okay.
not working.
I'll see if I can.
Good luck.
This is Julie. I had a few growers sound like they had concerns about greens quality because of the aggressiveness. And as a produce buyer, I had found that most of the growers did triple rinse, and the one that used a bubbler, the shelf life wasn't as good. And I always wondered if that was because you didn't get the cooling effect like you do when people do the three rinses. But yeah, I just found it didn't have the shelf life, and I don't know if that was the agitation or if that you just didn't get the same cooling you do when you're changing your water often and going through 3 bays. I don't know if you guys have any comments on that or have noticed anything that growers have told you.
I've heard from growers that they maybe have started with the drying fans and stopped using drying fans, because what they determined for shelf life is it wasn't a matter of dryness, but it was a matter of, like you said, cooling. And so just you go through the drying steps and then you lay it all out to blow warm air on it, just prolongs the heat exposure versus actually retaining a little bit of moisture straight out of the spinner and getting it bagged into the cooler quicker had a bigger impact on shelf life. But there's some people that swear by greens drying tables too. So I don't I don't grow greens to say, but that's what I've heard.
I've seen a fairly big organic operation in Pennsylvania where they use forced air cooling for their washed greens. So they get them all packed up. Well, they don't. They wash them, they force air cool them, and then they pack them in the cooler. But I have to say, the best greens I get are from the local urban farm that belongs to the co-op I buy from, and they just wash once in a big tub, and the quality is amazing and the shelf life is amazing. So I also think the amount of handling they get has a big impact on that too.
Yeah, for those of you who do not know the forced air stuff, there's definitely a good blog post PDF on the ag engineering site, and maybe Andy could post it, but it's just using a simple $100 or $150 fan or whatever that is, and keeping greens loose, but sealing them and blowing air through it, and you can get an incredible cooling effect with evaporation. You do need a drier environment or cooler environment. It's great to do that actually in the cooler, if possible, or in a cooler, dry room. Thanks for putting that up, Andy.
Yeah, and I will just say forced air cooling does work great for some crops more than others. Some have had luck doing it with greens, but typically the cooling step for greens is hydro cooling in dunk tanks, as opposed to trying to force air through a highly dense product like a crate of greens can be tricky, but it doesn't mean ineffective either.
Other folks with bubbler stuff. What about motors? Henry, did you join? I'm looking at the participants, but I'm curious about. Yeah, Henry Webb is here from Old Road Farm, I believe, and you have a bubbler. I'm just curious of what your experience with that is. Oh,
Hi,
that's
Han.
not Henry. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
What was the question?
Just your bubbler. We're sort of rapping about bubblers right now, and if they're too aggressive, or how you control the volume. And I know you guys have had one. I think you had one, right, with the thing in the ceiling or something.
We actually don't have one. We've been meaning to make one for like 4 years now.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Welcome anyway. And motors, any experience or recommendations for like the air blowing motors? jacuzzi motors or whatever, blowers?
Wait, are you asking me?
I'm asking anyone.
Okay.
Yeah, not you because you don't even have one yet. But people who do. Okay, well, it sounds like perhaps not, but let's anything else on bubblers right now? We can move along, and of course we got good resources. Happy to sort of do some hand holding or talk through any of this stuff in more detail with any of you. If you just at the end we'll do the eval and put I'd like follow up if it's something like that, and we can definitely connect with you.
I'm looking at buying like the jacuzzi motor, setting up the on and off switch with the dimmer switch. And then I was wondering if there are certain ones that are maybe larger so that your range, like on a really dirty spinach, obviously it'll be a little higher. And then, but if it's clean spinach, I want to clean it at the least agitation as possible. And so like I can literally like draw these little pieces of pie on my dimmer switch where I want them set up. But it seems like that's going to be difficult if you just bump the switch a little and it changes the thing a lot. So is there anyone who has been using those, or is maybe just knows where there's one that's just not very sensitive and I can turn it a little bit more or less?
I personally do not know the answer to that. Anyone else? And we can get back to you on it, Jason. This is probably a really good thing for us to dig into a little bit if no one has any advice. All right, when you do that little eval, make a note of that. We'll get back to you. That's great. A few more pictures and then we'll jump into some other folks. Yeah, this is the bin cleaning is been really important, and I know different people have different systems, so it's worth setting up stuff to make bin cleaning easy, given the amount of time it can take. And these are just a couple of examples. The sort of fancy one from Slack Hollow that actually rotates. You rotate it by hand, and then this little rack set up at Denison Farm. And even these little Denison Farm, you see in the background, these little tiny things that hold the crates. They're the perfect size, and I got a bunch of those sitting around, and it's really nice they're light. You can just throw them down anywhere and put things on them. These are things that save a lot of time. You can see they're little wooden frames. Not a good picture of them right here, but you can kind of see them in the background. There's just having good flow set up for landing packing. That's that a really key thing. A lot of people don't usually have the space they need for landing stuff, and then or you pre and post landing. So definitely focusing on that, whatever it is. Task and job organization. This has really been kind of key, I think, for daily resets or cleanings or whatnot. We've seen a lot of people who've done stuff that this is at Route 5 and Footprint Farm, but that really help with movable stuff and colors and things like that. Help organize crews. Bags, the different kinds of bags. This is at Blaze Farm, who swears by these two bags. One's a CA bag that it keeps things fresh for like incredibly long. He says it's about twice as expensive for this bag on the left that those beans are in, but they make them for greens as well. I don't know much about them, but if someone's interested, I can look into them. And then these slotted bags for draining. So if you don't get greens totally dry, putting them in something where they're able to vent a lot easier. And a care of workers too, especially in cold season. So this is a picture we've used a fair bit from Route 5 because it's got like all this amazing stuff in it. But I'm pointing to the gloves hanging up because and aprons, and I know in the really cold season that tends to be a really important thing to keep people happy and sort of efficient. A lot of other cool stuff on this photo as we will go into right now. That is it just for some of the photos I had to inspire people. Okay, so let's stop sharing here. So let's focus on some of the issues that people brought up here. And I heard no shade. At least two people, maybe three. So is the setup for those of you who had mentioned that shade, obviously super important, is it that you have nothing to put like an awning on or build off of? You're like out in the open, or what's the situation, and is it fixable? I guess I'd love to hear that, and maybe anyone could chime in real quick. Who was it that mentioned no shade? A couple people. Maybe one person who mentioned that could pipe up and just explain the situation, and we'll see about what could be done to fix it.
Hi. In our case, we have some shade. So there's some pretty overgrown peach trees that I'm about to prune back heavily, but that's what's adjacent to our water hose area. And then that's also very close to our high tunnel. So I couldn't set up easily like an additional tent there. I've thought about this season, like putting up some sort of shade cloth in my tree. But I don't know how well that's going to turn out. So it's been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, so you have nothing to put anything up on, which sort of means it's time to maybe, if you're doing enough, you might need to deal with that in another way, I imagine. Yeah, so maybe there's not much to say about that. But yeah, any other just shade idea, people who have dealt with shade before, I guess that's what I'd love to hear, like any cool fixes or things you found that worked well.
I can chime in. Can you hear me?
Yep. And Kelsey.
We don't have any permanent infrastructure, so we're strictly tenant operators. And we use a hoop house that has double layer of white poly. And that's really nice in the winter because lots of light gets through. In the summer, it is a little bit hot, but it's definitely shaded and we can open up all four sides to get a pretty good airflow.
Let's see. How about I was interested in the spinach, in things being a bit dirty, but not wanting to wash them more. And what are some fixes or things that people have done that have helped in that regard? So, for example, the photo of that shallow, long trough for cleaning spinach. That was something Hank came up with and tried and absolutely loves. Like he still uses that. And I'm just curious if other people have had things besides additional tanks, if there are other methods for cleaning that have worked well, or getting things a little cleaner without damaging them more.
I can chime in again.
Yep.
I mean, our approach has been to grow spinach that has a smooth leaf and plant it close together so that dirt can't splash on the leaves. And if it is dirty, you need to put less in the dunk tank so that you can make sure there's like just lots of water flow over each leaf.
Bigger dunk tanks, have people used that, or deeper, like one big one in the beginning? Just curious what some of the methods have been.
Back to just growing the spinach, we do flat leaf, but then we also, for field production, I look for upright growth habit, because some spinach grows really upright and some does not, so that's important. And then just taking your time, I guess, when your stuff is really dirty, it's just going to take longer to wash. So just, I guess, managing your crew for that.
That's cool. I had not heard the upright. So basically you just are not going to get these totally nasty leaves because almost all of them that you're harvesting are not getting splashed from rain. Is that correct?
I mean, you'll still have to have some nasty leaves, you know, but the upright varieties grow very upright, and it just makes it a little bit easier. We go for the same thing with our head lettuces. Like, I choose varieties that have an upright growth habit, just both for bottom rot and so that the bottom leaves aren't as dirty.
Very cool. Is anyone, I'm curious if there is anyone that is growing shoulder season in high tunnels and not washing greens. You have very, clean product and just, labeling it as such. Is there anyone who's experimented with that?
Hi, this is Elizabeth. I sometimes do that especially if I'm not sure that the greens have thoroughly thawed. Like, I have some bok choy sometimes that might have some ribs that are still frozen, and I want to take it. So I mean, that's the main reason. Normally I'd wash them, but if there's any question about the thawing, yeah.
Anyone else? I've actually had some good luck with that, with bigger spinach in greenhouses when they're too fragile to wash, basically, but they're not dirty at all. And if they're harvested when they're cool, it works pretty well, seems to.
Yeah, we don't do very much of that, but we're really open to not washing them in that situation because we don't have a climate controlled wash and pack area for one. So we don't really want to destroy our greens when we wash them, and then in the freezing temperatures. But it's pretty clean, and we're okay selling it that way. But we don't do it often, and I haven't done it consistently for couple of years, but it's okay. It's okay. I don't think it's a big deal for our customers. And again, we don't do it very much, so.
Okay, other things, I'd love to hear just things that have worked pretty well, what you've done. So whether it be drying tables, fans, something that sort of sticks out as you may have mentioned something or alluded to something in the intro, and I'd love to get a few more people just sharing a little bit more detail about what you've done for other folks on the call. I could start calling on people too, but I'll just be quiet for a little bit and see what happens.
My take, this is Paul, my take on greens drying has a little bit to do with what kind of diversity of crop is moving through the wash station in addition to greens. So if you are trying to do a diversified CSA or something along those lines, and you're not just a greens farm, and I don't mean it that way, but you're not just washing and drying greens at that given day, it really does matter that you get that stuff through, because it can just screech everything to a halt and or force your hand to harvest and move other product through, in a timeline that might not be the most efficient. So that's my thought, a little esoteric, but it's my thought. Like, if you're trying to move other product through, then it's probably worth making the investment in some sort of spinner dryer kind of piece just to get that stuff through and in the cooler so that also you can wash all this other diverse crop. I don't know what other people's thoughts are about that.
Thoughts on diversity, if you're doing greens with whatever, going to market, 10, 15 other types of crops going through on a particular wash day, how that influences the way you would dry something. or dry greens?
We have some like pretty heavy pack days, and like when we know we're gonna do a lot of salad mix, so we do big pack days on Thursday. We do custom pack CSA boxes on Thursday, and then also Friday, and as well as getting ready for farmers markets and maybe some wholesale orders. So we will, to alleviate pack shed work, we will like harvest other things that take time on Wednesday. So we space out the harvest. So we'll harvest all of our scallions and maybe all of our bunched beets and bunched carrots and bunched radishes on Wednesday. So that shit's like ready in the cooler to go. And then we'll leave like our tender green harvests for a closer date of distribution on Thursday or Friday. So it's not necessarily like changing anything about the wash pack, but it's changing like the labor flow, and that's worked well for us. So then I think it's like just important in general to really alleviate any sort of rush while washing produce, because it's the final step. And that's what we've done, because we like to take our time. I don't really tell people to go faster.
Well, and Lisa, I just want to point out, I think, you've done an amazing job with that kind of flow, not rush, and, really taking your time to do things carefully, it sounds like, and working with your crew to do that. And I want to note that the solution that you just gave is a process solution, and it requires some stepping back and like getting those blinders off, because it's really easy when you're in the sort of high pressure wash pack to think, oh, okay, I got to push this. We got to just like make this work and do the, somehow make, change the setup or do this to make it go quicker. But I think if you're feeling stressed, like that being able to step back and think about, well, is there a different way, an out of the box way to sort of think about how to approach the situation? So that's what I just heard. I'm sort of reflecting back, and that's so important to do when you're in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, and I've looked into like sort of like, we're sort of on the cusp of being at like one of those line washers and everything, but we're really just not quite there. And yeah, we like to keep it pretty simple. And so generally I just look towards like the labor flow and workflow to sort of like alleviate problems. So pretty much just like the packing house, like we're harvesting every day, so stuff should just like be getting washed every day.
Right.
It should just like be constantly going, like the wash pack, like is how I sort of view it.
Yep. Let's hear from a couple of other folks. We don't have too much more time, but people who've had do a lot of greens, and I know, or salad greens or whatnot. So Henry and Gabrielle are here. I know you guys crank out a bunch of stuff. I'd just love to hear, from whoever else, some things that if you want to share something right now about what you've learned and, trial and error and things that you feel really good about. And Henry, you have raised your hand, so why don't you go? Hi.
Hey everybody. Yeah, sorry I came in late and told Gabby the wrong time for this.
Yeah.
But one thing I will share here is that we have been drying our greens in bulb crates in the cooler after spinning them since we started doing it. And I think that makes a huge difference, and it also helps with workflow, because we don't need to get everything bagged into final packaging. The morning of Greens Day, we can then spend, part of that afternoon getting in other things for the harvest, and then finish up with the bagging or the final bagging.
That's cool.
And I think that step really helps. Just the air drying of the greens helps with longevity, and it helps spread out the workflow. So that's something we've picked up over the years.
That's great, Henry. And really quick cooling of the internal flesh of when there's evaporation off of those salad greens in the cooler when it's a lower humidity too, potentially. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And how many pounds are you guys doing sort of when you're letting that dry and then and bagging it?
It's like 100 or a couple hundred maybe.
Mm-hmm. And how long are you letting them sit in the bulk crates in the cooler?
I'd say max like 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So if we for whatever reason, if we can't get to like final bagging that afternoon or evening, we will then transfer them to flip top, like closed crates, because they will they'll dry out too much overnight.
Yep,
So,
that's
but
great.
We try to avoid doing that, unless we have the extra, and then that's how we store the extra is in the flip top. So.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that is a process workaround as well that is going to really improve the product quality. Kelsey?
Yeah, my question has sort of been answered, but we do a similar thing. For our retail packing, we'll put the grains into flip top totes and cool them before we pack them into bags. So we find that the retail bags cool down really slowly if the grains are warm going into them. But we've been thinking about switching to a vented tote, like an open top, like really vented tote similar to a bulk crate, both for field harvest and for this post-wash pre-bag cooling. But I'm concerned about wilting, and I was looking for feedback from others if you do this successfully, or if you find wilting after a certain period of time, or any comments or advice on that.
Henry, you have experience with the wilting with that 8-hour time period, like how you called it there?
Yeah, I mean, basically, if we harvest greens in the morning, put them in bulb crates, if we haven't gotten them to them by that evening, is when we'll transfer it. Yeah, I mean, different things also wilt differently. Like arugula wilts a lot quicker than spinach, but yeah, that's my rule of thumb for it. Is if you can get to it that day, it's fine. If not, put it in something that is closed up.
Do you ever put any kind of covering over the tops of them as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's another way to do it, is if you just throw a big plastic bag over the top of the bulb crates, that can work too. Yeah.
Right. And Kelsey, if you had that wilting happen, like under what situation? Like
Well, we haven't tried this yet. We've stuck with
Uh-huh.
just the solid totes out of concern about wilting, because we are trying to actively cool them. Like, we put all of our greens into our refrigerated van and cool them while we're starting the washing process. So we're like running it in there. There's a lot of air circulating, and I've just been nervous about them wilting. Plus, we don't have like a surplus or a lot of these vented totes, so it'd be like an investment to replace all of our totes, and haven't done it yet.
Great. Tell you those bread trays. Try the bread trays, and you stack them up, and there's a lot of surface area. And probably an hour and two in the cooler would be great. All right, Guru, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question for Henry. The bulb crates, are they forced air in the cooler, or is there any sort of like fan inside of the cooler, or you just drop them in?
No, we just drop them in. We have dedicated bulb crates just for this purpose, because one thing I worry about is onset surface area there, and there's a lot of surface area on a bulb crate to get dirty. So we have dedicated bulb crates that we just use for this. They just between the clean washroom and a pallet in the cooler. There's no forced air. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Cool.
Great.
I store my stuff in the bulb crate in the cooler, and I found that it's really important to make sure it's on the other side of the cool box, just that the air blowing. That makes it for wilting purposes. That's just to make sure it's not in the direct, sight of the air.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, everybody's cooler is different. I think our cooler is actually like designed to hold a little more humidity because it was actually an old cheese cooler. I forget what it's called technically, but it's yes. When we had a cool bot, we definitely kept things out of that direct flow from the air conditioner.
I see. Great. Okay, great. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that has come out of this, and we're basically out of time. Again, really complicated topic. You know, the floor, Julie, I was thinking about your floor and drainage and sinking into the ground and landscape fabric, you know. Does anyone have anything on that? There's one thing I was thinking of from, you know, that I've seen a couple of growers do, but I'm curious just to get maybe one comment about that. If anyone has any thoughts on how to work with drainage and sort of a not good floor. But actually, Julie, we want to just say a tiny bit more about what actually is happening on that floor and see if anyone has any comments, and then we'll probably wrap it up for today. And I'm happy to follow up with anyone on specific issues and things you're trying to improve.
And it's mostly, we didn't do a very good job on like site prep. So just the small amount of spray water and stuff over time, it just kind of accumulates. And if we thought more about siting it or putting some gravel down or something, it probably would be better. It's just not planning ahead for something that was temporary. But sometimes it's good to maybe put a little more thought into something that's temporary, because it always ends up lasting a lot longer than you plan on.
There you go. Yeah. And thanks, Julie. And that, yeah, the gravel, putting something like that will drain really easily and then covering that. And I've seen growers do that, you know, in various setups, and it works quite well. I mean, you can, if you put down a few yards of gravel and then, you know, cover it with landscape fabric, or even depending on where you are, it could be a white landscape fabric too. Pinning it down, then you get a much better way to sort of absorb some water and have it drain or trickle drain out. So I'm looking at the time, and I really want to encourage any of you here who are making some changes this year, making some improvements. I heard some stuff about bubblers, obviously, and you know, trying some different stuff with like moving greens from one tub to the next. We got to get on that, coming up with some other good options, some other sort of paddle options that are not like a fishing net, which can be a pain in the butt, those kinds of things. Bigger green spinners. There is a good resources that Andy actually dropped in the chat box on different kinds of spinners, but yeah, how to work with them or other ideas, just follow up with us, and that's what we're here for. This is like a seed for these kinds of little questions people have that are nagging. You're about to do something. We want to work with you and try to support you in whatever you're doing this coming season. All right, so I'm going to post in the chat box the little eval, which should take you no less than a few minutes or no more. And hold on one second. And before you leave, if you could fill that out, here it comes. Okay. Oh yeah, pool skimmers. Those are, yeah, a good idea. And of course, many people have used those as well. I still have something different in mind that I imagined when Karen was talking that I'd like to try to find. Okay, so there's a little Google form, very quick, just take you a couple minutes to do. If you fill that out, and again, put down your contact info if you want us to follow up with any particular help or support on any of this stuff. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And next week, I think we're gonna have parent farmers with kids talking about how they have handled and worked with their kids in the wash pack and all over the farm.